The US administration scrambles to clarify comments made by President Joe Biden, where he appears to call for regime change in Russia.
5 people are wounded after several rocket attacks in Lviv near residential areas as the Ukrainian president calls for more military aid.
Malta's governing Labour Party claims victory following a general election marked by the lowest turnout in decades.
For God's sake, this man cannot remain in power.
US President Joe Biden's unscripted remark at the end of a speech in Poland has raised a few eyebrows and left the US administration scrambling to clarify its meaning. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken was quick to stress that Biden was not calling for an immediate change of government in Moscow, but was simply making the point that Putin cannot be empowered to wage war or engage in aggression against Ukraine or anyone else.
We do not have a strategy of regime change in Russia or anywhere else for that matter. In this case, as in any case, it's up to the people of the country in question. It's up to the Russian people.
The Kremlin dismissed Biden's remark, saying that's not for Biden to decide. The president of Russia is elected by Russians. This speech and the passages which concern Russia is astounding, to use polite words. French President Emmanuel Macron warned against a verbal escalation of the situation.
I think that first of all we have to be factual, and then we have to do everything to prevent the situation from getting out of hand. I won't use this kind of language because I'm still talking with President Putin. Because what do we want to do collectively? We want to stop the war that Russia has started in Ukraine without going to war and without escalation. This is the objective we've had for a month.
Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin congratulated Russia's National Guard on the 6th anniversary of its creation on Sunday. Putin specially addressed the service staff units involved in the special military operation in Donbass and Ukraine.
Running for cover in Lviv as air raid sirens blared out on Saturday afternoon. Hundreds of thousands of displaced families have taken refuge here, seeing it as a relatively safe place to go. But several rockets struck the western Ukrainian city, bringing a chill to those taking shelter. One of the explosions targeted a fuel storage facility near Lviv, not far from residential areas, wounding 5 people. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky awarded service personnel of the Ukrainian National Guard who showed courage and dedication countering Russian aggression, and he continued to call for more military aid. What is the price of this security? This is very specific. These are planes for Ukraine. These are tanks for our state. This is missile defense. This is an anti-ship weapon. This is what our partners have. This is what is just gathering dust there. After all, this is all for freedom, not only for Ukraine, but for freedom in Europe. Over in the capital, Kyiv, officials say 5 houses were destroyed on the outskirts of the city after shelling in the area. At least 5 people, including a child, were injured. The Russian Defense Ministry shared video footage of an airstrike on a Ukrainian Buk missile system performed by a Russian Iskander missile. Another video allegedly showed a destroyed Ukrainian command post captured by Russian troops in the Kyiv region. Residents of Slavutich protested with a huge Ukrainian flag and patriotic songs after the regional governor said the town had been taken over by Russian troops. However, the Ukrainian resolve continues despite constant shelling and attacks.
Labour delegates cheer as Malta's governing party claim victory following a general election. Final results are not expected until late on Sunday, but Malta's 2 main parties, Labour and the Nationalist Party, took samples to ascertain the preliminary results. Prime Minister Robert Abella said in a call with TVM News that his party had won a majority while in the counting hall in Naxar. The vote saw the lowest turnout to the polls in decades at 85.5%. Opinion polls had shown an inevitable Labour win despite a lacklustre campaign hampered by coronavirus restrictions. The party is also still tainted by the high-level corruption exposed by investigative journalist Daphne Caruana Galizia, who was killed by a car bomb in October 2017. Abella took over in January 2020 and has since moved to strengthen good governance and press freedom.
US Secretary of State Antony Blinken has promised Washington will work alongside its allies to stop Iran from producing nuclear weapons. Blinken made his comments ahead of a special gathering with his Israeli and Gulf Arab counterparts where the Iranian deal was expected to be top of the agenda.
We are both committed, both determined that Iran will never acquire a nuclear weapon. The United States believes that a return to full implementation of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action is the best way to put Iran's nuclear program back in the box that it was in, but has escaped from since the United States withdrew from that agreement.
But Robert Malley, US Special Envoy for Iran, announced that the US will maintain sanctions on the Iranian Revolutionary Guard and the Islamic Republic's ideological army at the Doha Forum on Sunday, much to the disappointment of Iran's leaders.
IRGC is a national army, and a national army cannot be listed as terrorist group. And certainly it is not acceptable. That is very important for Iranians.
Tehran has stepped up negotiations in recent months to revive the 2015 agreement. The European Union's top diplomat, Josep Borrell, says he hopes a deal will be possible and that world powers could iron out their issues in a matter of days.
Protesters on the street of Kabul chanting "Open the schools" in the first of what could be many protests demanding the reopening of girls' secondary schools in Afghanistan. The initial demonstration came after the Taliban opened the schools for the new academic year on Wednesday, then closed them only hours after lessons started.
The Taliban should reopen schools for girls because women are half of society. And the Taliban cannot eliminate half of the population who can work shoulder to shoulder with men.
Women's rights groups in the country are planning to stage several more protests if the schools do not reopen next week. And many people in the international community have also criticized the Taliban's initial decision to close the schools. Nobel Prize laureate Malala Yousafzai also spoke about the closure during a panel on women's rights in Afghanistan.
I think that
they were waiting outside their schools, but the gates were closed, and they were crying. They were crying to media, they were crying to their parents.
UN human rights experts condemned the decision to postpone the opening of the schools. Since the initial closure, the US Special Representative for Afghanistan said that the Taliban has made promises the schools would reopen.
Landmarks around the world were plunged into darkness overnight as the lights were switched off for Earth Hour. The hour-long World Wildlife Fund organised event held annually on the last Saturday of March aims to raise awareness about climate change. Starting in Sydney, Australia in 2007, the event has grown to include more than 190 countries around the globe.
Armed with brushes and cans of spray paint, street artists around the world are denouncing Russia's invasion of Ukraine. In California, Todd Goodman, who is also a musician and photographer, has spent the last month adorning otherwise blank walls with colourful anti-war murals.
I've decided to step out in support of the Ukrainian people. As I look at this man right here, the strength and the courage and the bravery, the inspiration.
A vocal fan of Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky, he isn't the only artist using the war as inspiration. Corey Matty collaborated with tattoo artist Giuliano Trindade and painted the head of Russia's President Vladimir Putin being carried away by doves.
I was doing a whole mural on Melrose about student loans and the crisis of student debt relief, and then Ukraine hit. And then I was like, oh, I have to do something.
For these creatives, art is the best medium to show their solidarity with Ukraine. According to Matty, who is otherwise known as the LA Hope Dealer, art can potentially change people's perspectives and is a call to action.
I always say good art makes you think, but great art makes you do. So if If my art or someone else's art can make you stop and have a conversation about something, or even stop and hit the QR code to donate, then we're making an impact for the better.
Both Goodman and Matty are seeking donations on their respective websites and social media channels. Goodman says he is selling t-shirts and prints and will be donating all proceeds to Care International and Direct Aid.